whole time. Please have a seat at the front there and just push the talk button, even though I didn't. Huh? Yeah. Yeah, you can. You're welcome to sit here if you prefer, so you're a bit closer to us. You'll just have to give them that mic. You just have to give them that mic, Mike.
Sorry.
Oh. Welcome. Right. That mic in front of your mouth, if you can. Just you can pull. There's no cords to the mic. So,
Okay,
Mike, why don't you push it right in front of them? There you go, because it's got no cords to it.
Right. Thank you very much. As you know, I'm from the Menshed Committee. I thought I'd just start giving a little bit of a justification, if you like, for why a Menshed would be a good idea anywhere, but particularly in Cambridge at this time. You probably do know that there was a Menshed some time ago, and that sadly ceased to operate. We have managed to restart, and we have one of the leading lights of that particular Menshed on our committee to assist us as well. So we're quite hopeful that we can make a good start. There are several rationales for a Menshed wherever you happen to be. One is we're all living longer. That usually means for a lot of people more years of uneconomic activity. They're sort of out of the mainstream, as it were, and you can lose a sense of purpose as a consequence of that. Also, our population is aging and mobility reduces. Often that means you become more isolated just because you can't get out. There's medical evidence that keeping physically and mentally active reduces the risk of heart disease, dementia, other disorders associated with age. You'll find all of those sort of justifications in Menshed constitutions around the country. We really very strongly agree with them. We know that Cambridge is a very busy town. There's a lot going on. We feel that there's always space for more and something a little different. One of the big issues for us is going to be finding appropriate accommodation. And certainly we've had discussions with the council so far and have had very helpful responses. But as you probably all know, there isn't, we're not absolutely overwhelmed with empty places that would be just suitable for the sort of activities we have in mind, some of which can be quite noisy. So we're hopeful in the end that we will find somewhere, and ideally the sooner the better. Just to give you a little bit of what we've done so far, we held a public meeting on the 26th of August. We had 41 men attend that meeting, which we felt was a very good turnout, and all voted to set up a shed in Cambridge. Everybody felt it was going to be a good idea. We set up a small working group, and that led on to an inaugural general meeting, which took place on the 18th of November. We were lucky enough to get Cambridge Primary School Hall in order to hold that meeting. 22 men attended that, and there were 2 apologies. Again, there was an agreement to establish a shed with the title of Cambridge Community Menshed, which is what we will do. And a committee of 6 members were voted in. Jared and I are both members of that committee. I'm the chair. We're going to have to register as an incorporated society. We feel it's right to register it as a charity, and of course we'll need to get a bank account. And that's going to be a bit of a set of hurdles, we think, but we'll get there. So the main reason for coming here is to tell you that, to make sure that other people who might not yet have become aware of what we're doing do become aware. And also, if anybody's got anything that they can do to help us get underway, I'm sure that in the fullness of the time, the Menshed will repay whatever investment the community wants to make in it. I'm currently involved in another Menshed, which I will be leaving, Gerard is involved in Matamata Men's Shed. So we know the contribution that those sheds have made in the communities that they're in, and feel pretty confident that we can do the same here. I'm open to questions.
Fantastic, thank you. Any questions? Just to give the board a little bit of a background, I have met with these guys and linked them with Brad and well, I think it was Brad and Sally. Obviously, it is quite tricky finding that location that's going to be secure, that's going to be big enough. So that's hopefully where we can help you if we hear of any places. Are there any questions for Mike and Gerard about the men's shed?
Thank you. It's a great initiative. I love that you're looking to get this started. I was just wondering whether it needs to be a space that's just for you, or if you'd be able to maybe work in with like some of the high school technology space or somewhere like Achievement House. Would anything like that work for you, or does it really need to be your own dedicated place?
I think we would be prepared to share. I think it's difficult to say until you actually look at a venue and see what sort of space it is. But I think if suggestions were made, we'd certainly follow them up.
We had a bit of a tour of the Cambridge High School facilities when Sister City Pohora was here, and they have a very impressive setup. So it might be worth asking someone there if that's something that they would consider at all.
It may be difficult to share with a high school. I think that just because of time.
So you'd be operating during the day?
We'd be mostly operating during the day, yes.
Yeah.
And also the noise factor is a major as well. That okay, with saws going, planers, etc. There is a reasonable amount of noise that's emitted from a men's shed, and the last thing we would want to do is actually disturb the neighbours or the other parties that are associated. But we could well share. It's just a matter of whether we can get that symbolic agreement where both parties are working. And generally speaking, we only work within 2 to 3 days a week. So there is the possibility that, okay, we have 2 to 3 days and they have a couple of days or whatever. And so that type of arrangement can be going. What I'd also say is and the well-being from a men's shed is immense. And one of the things that I only just retired myself, and one of the concerns I had working in a fairly pressure-tight job is actually falling off the cliff. And there was some major concern about that. And what has actually happened is that men's shed has given me that stability. And so the well-being is absolutely essential, especially with people like myself moving from a very active life into a retirement life, etc. The other thing is that what we do in Matamata is, and I'm sure you're the same, we actually are helping the community immensely. Council, organisations, and even down to older people who probably don't have the resources to be able to mend and fix things like chairs, tables. We're constantly being asked if we can fix this and that. And this is fantastic because you have such a variety of people with skills that can do these sorts of things within the men's shed. So we're performing a really essential community spirit type of thing to be able to help those people. Otherwise, I mean, we just have a small charge if they were to go to someone who, they're small jobs and most joiners won't touch them anyhow, but if they did, they'd be looking at sort of $90, $100 an hour, and it just makes it totally impractical from their point of view. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a very strong social connections really important. And right. To your point about making repairs, is that a big chunk of
waste minimisation round that comes up. Could be, and I'm not saying it will solve the accommodation problem, but certainly with any sort of repair type work you're contributing to. Strong, but maybe find the funding in that respect. This will be a running cost or repair projects that you might want to run. So just put that on your radar.
That's helpful, thank you.
So
Be great if you can get going. Is there any empty space in the council building up the far end of Leamington? Have you looked up there?
Is that Arnold Street? Is that the one you mean?
I don't know, it's Arnold Street, but it's right at the very far end, big bit of grass, and it's quite a sizable building there.
I think we have discussed that, but I don't know if that's actually going to become available.
Yeah, because there's been several different groups in that building in the past.
That's right. Yeah.
I know Rotary were using part of it at one stage and they've moved out. So.
I can't say, but we have been advised that there are plans for that.
Right.
any further questions, Mike? Good? No.
And even though it's called Men's Shed, are women welcome in this space?
That's an interesting question. Yes, of course, women are welcome. Certainly, the men's shed I've operated in Te Kuiti has had women come and go. Some men have quite fixed and strong ideas about whether there should be women involved. I think there are often workarounds for that.
We did call as a community
Specifically to try and give it a wider feel to it. If somebody turned up and said, I want to make a dog kennel, can I join to make the dog kennel, and then wanted to stay? It would be a membership application like any other.
Okay. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that. We'll keep in touch and obviously just keep our ears to the ground if there's anything that we hear of further, and obviously still keep you in touch with that council staff and just, yeah, hope that we can find.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Thanks for your time. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Janet. Welcome. Nice to see you. Just push the little purple, fire away.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I've been a Cambridge. I've been a Waipa resident for 48 years, and I moved into town probably about 5 years ago. And I've now become a street walker. And I'll leave it at that. When I first, I don't know whether it was before I came into town or whether I was here, Cambridge managed to get 2 awards for the best town or the prettiest town or something. I can't remember how many years ago it was. Anyway, I walk regularly. I meet twice a week with 2 long-standing friends, and we bike around Cambridge, and we bike out to the Hautapi factory, bike the end of the bike path and come back in. And we're always discussing about the rubbish on the roads. Now, some time ago, I wrote a letter to somebody, and it was Sue Milner that replied. Can you remember? And I can't remember who I wrote the letter to. And I'll just aside, I've just had a fabulous 3 weeks in India. Didn't see a scrap of rubbish in Agra, the motorway to Delhi or in South Delhi, which is like Remuera. That's because I've had the G20 conference and Mr. Modi has made sure the streets were clean. Sue replied and said it's health and safety. She didn't think it was possible. I know what I said, Sue. I said, we have so much pride in our town. Like I went to the Christmas parade the other day, and I always go to the bike racing. Why couldn't we just have an hour before the bike races, Anzac Day, nobody's at work, we're all got our feet up. Could you go out and clean up your verge before you come to town? That's all I'm asking for. I'm not asking for money, I'm not asking for a committee. I'm not asking for this and I'm not asking for that.
Mm. Whereabouts do you see the most rubbish? do you
Well, it's
think?
interesting. Today I went for a walk towards Rest Haven and back to my place in Alpha. I didn't see anything. So those residents get a good tick.
Mm.
I've just checked the steps from Anzac down below. If I go down to Mitre 10, filthy. That's a bank which I'm not prepared to get into because
Mm.
it's the most rubbish we actually see biking along the main road from the field, is it Clementine, the nursery, whatever it is,
Yeah.
back into town, around probably the outlying areas. I pick up rubbish I picked up some rubbish walking here. I can't help myself. So
Mm.
I didn't think it had to be formal. I didn't think it had to be a health and safety issue. I thought we could just say something like, you know, we love our town, we've got pride, let's just pick up the rubbish outside our place.
Mm.
And a woman I know who's, I won't mention names, very well known to this community, a stalwart, says she gets out and cleans her gutter every day, every week with her spade, and her husband is mortified. So there you go.
Mm. Right, questions, comments?
Hello, I'm a bit the same actually. I'm always fixing up rubbish too. But have you thought about tying in with Keep New Zealand Beautiful? Because they do an event every, I think it's September.
I
Might
don't
be
really-
just a way
oh,
to
sorry.
raise awareness.
Yeah, well, I just thought we could, you know, we have pride in it. I mean, we used to have a slogan, Town of Trees and Champions. I think that's, I don't know, people, I don't think it happens anymore. Just we like to keep our town tidy. I didn't think it had to be a formal sort of arrangement.
Mm.
I just like some, you know, some community boards saying we're so proud of our town. Perhaps pick a bit of rubbish up and keep it that way. That's all I'm asking for.
Mm.
Mm.
Do you think the rubbish comes out of cars as people drive?
Well, where I lived at Roto Rangi, it was definitely when cars slowed down to go around the corner. It was all the KFC and the McDonald's.
Mm.
The block I'm on, definitely McDonald's. Those
Mm.
I'm picking up cans and McDonald's. Yeah, but it's kids dropping that.
Mm. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Yeah.
No, and if I see any kids do it, I ask to pick it up, and
Yeah,
they say,
good.
"Oh yes."
Good for you. Good for you. Okay, well, that's something that we can, I guess, pass on to, who would it be? Yeah, Colin, for sure.
Because I think the town's looking great today. I've
Mm.
walked around a fair bit of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Mm. Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Oh,
And I'll bike down past Sue's next week, and we'll have a good what's it like down her road.
Just your mic, Sue.
You dropped the lid off a can.
I know.
I got picked up.
I'm getting a lot of flat cans, and I was reading in the paper the other day about PALS, PALS, which is a great RTD. First, so I'm probably picking up a lot of PALS that have been squashed flat. I don't know. Mm.
Right, dangerous, affected. Read your report.
No, you haven't, because I can't take any credit for the report.
Melanie, not sorry.
It's a really big overview. It's another policy that council required to have. It's due for its
Oh, just pop your mic.
very sensitive. Yes, another policy we're required to have. It's due for a statutory review, so we're starting that process. And really, in essence, the only change to it is that the previous policy effectively was just a cut and paste of the bare minimum requirements of the Act. This is intended to give a bit more guidance to council staff and to building owners on what council's process will be if we receive complaint that a building may fit the criteria of dangerous, unsanitary or affected building, and just provide a bit more context around the process that will follow in respect to that. So that's it in a nutshell, and I'm quite happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thank you. Questions? Sue? Just try that mic again, Sue.
That you're aware of.
The policy doesn't get a huge amount of use. I think we've issued maybe 2 notices under the existing policy in the last couple of years, and they can be temporary, or they can be in place until works are undertaken by the owner or by council. And the other point of discussion in Te Awamutu was that council also has a number of other mechanisms that it can use potentially before a building reaches that stage. So we've got the provisions of the Health Act or the district plan or even bylaws to some extent that we may utilise first before we apply this policy. So no, it doesn't. There are not a huge number of buildings that are affected by it at this point in time. And it excludes earthquake prone buildings as well, which is another difference.
Thank you. Elise, Alana, any comments, questions?
Not really any questions. It seemed straightforward and seemed to make sense to me. Is there anything in there that you think might be controversial or curly in any way?
No, good question. No, I don't think so. A question was raised around how it relates to heritage buildings, which obviously is significant to Waipa. And I think the key thing there is that it's been worded in such a way so that this policy won't become an avenue to potentially speed up the removal of a heritage building, that there needs to be a defined process to assess the value of that building and how that should be dealt with, rather than someone just saying it's dangerous, it needs to go. So a bit of context around that. Otherwise, operationally, no, I'm hoping it would provide the guidance that we need in those circumstances.
Am I right in understanding the disputes clause that's new for this bylaw, that landowners can go through or building owners can go through a disputes process? Is that new in this one, or was that in the old one too?
Yeah, I think it's just got more context around how that works. So effectively any decision that council makes will have a appeal provision to somewhere. And it's just about, again, better understanding how that works.
And I just wanted some clarification on what charge on the land, please, in regards to work being carried out by council. The charge on land, I just don't understand it.
It's effectively a mechanism where if the person doesn't pay through, an invoice or some other sales, but like a mortgage.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think they're going flat.
I think they're going flat.
That's when you turn one on.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
That'll be quite a bit.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Maybe 3 is the maximum.
Yeah, I think that was what it was.
Okay.
Yeah, so effectively
okay.
it goes on the title, if you like, and then we can recover it later.
Thank you. And the last question was, council won't need to obtain approval for inspections unless the building is a household. So council are able to enter that property without the landlord's prior permission. And how do they get to that point? Is it if a member of the community calls up and says, I think this is an unsafe building, council can just go in without notifying the landlord? Just wanted some clarity around that.
Yeah, generally the process in this case would be triggered by a complaint. We're not actively doing inspections looking for them. Every piece of legislation's got defined powers of entry as part of that. So we'd be, in this case, applying what the Building Act allows.
Okay.
And the general line in sand is that anyone can enter a property, but if you come to entering a dwelling or a residential type environment, that's where your powers are limited. So you may need a search warrant, or you may have to invoke some other power.
Okay, but a commercial property can be entered.
Potentially we might have greater powers of entry there than we would
Okay.
in domestic. Each one would be, I mean, we're always going to try and work through with owners.
Of course, that
before
would always be
anyway.
your first point of call.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, those are my questions. Thank you. Okay, anything else, Mike? You would have heard this
Yep.
before, so.
Those are really good questions, by the way. That's probably better than we did in SPP, to be honest.
Can you pull over the mic?
I don't want to repeat that. I have nothing to add.
not allowed dog.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, all right. Well, I think that's great. I think we're happy to receive your report. Oh, yes. Now, are we going to make or not make a submission? I would almost err on saying we probably don't need to. This is such a straightforward policy without any issues. So if everyone else is.
Just a support of the changes. This is a formal submission. Yeah, is that helpful?
Yeah.
I reckon-
Oh, is a new software.
I think you should, because, you know, you have got under section 52 of the Local Government Act, you're required to maintain an overview of services. So
Okay,
even if you just support, I think it's a good thing to do.
okay.
And you get to use the new software,
New software.
which is practicing
Okay.
the LTP, right?
Is there someone who wants to do that submission?
No, I can't do it. Is that a DIY thing? Like, sorry, the new software, if you want to support this, do they go into some portal and do it?
Should we just do it now?
Yeah.
Let's just do it now.
You can
No, this is
literally,
good to know, because.
yeah, so you can just go to the Have Your Say page through council's website,
That way it's.
and then there should be a page on there that.
Okay, so we are going to make. Okay, so our motion is that we receive. Oh, sorry. I'll just do this as we speak. Mhm. Yep. Okay. Okay, so our motion is that we receive the report, Joe's report, titled Dangerous, Effective and Unsanitary Buildings Policy Consultation, and that we make a submission to that policy to support the changes that are proposed by this review. Such submission to be approved by the chair in consultation with the other board members. We'll move that. Alana, and I'll second that. And here it is here. And we just do what, have our say? Yep. Oh, we can just do it right now, can't we? 2 minutes. Yep, got a light agenda. Yep. Okay, so we're just going to say that we do support proposed changes. Yes. Are there any comments we would like to make? Any further comments? Or we just say the Cambridge Community Board supports the. No? Okay. Currently, the draft policy does not consider costs for repair when assessing heritage buildings. Should council also consider the cost for repairs as part of the assessment? Yes, no, or in part?
Can we discuss that for a minute? Because that's a really relevant point, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Next on that.
Again, I think that comes down to the not simply using that as one reason to make a decision that might be different if this policy didn't exist, if that makes sense. That simply there is not. Council shouldn't be defining a dollar amount as to whether a building should be saved or not. It should definitely be a consideration. But you get to that point on how many millions you may spend on a building as opposed to the benefit you get from maintaining it. So from my point of view, it's a consideration, but it's one of many, I guess.
And the way it's currently worded, it is a consideration, but one of many, is that right?
Just trying to see where that sits. Track version that I've got.
It's a good thing.
Yep.
Because it's
Yep.
bringing out the issues.
Yep. And I like the idea of doing submissions kind of like this, where we're all together and it can be more of a process of us doing it together as a group rather than one person going away, writing it, circulating it. This becomes a little, especially in an agenda that's light, it's quite good to do them. Yes.
So I think it's clause 7.2.1, which lists all of the different criteria, if I'm speed reading that correctly.
Page 52, that's the narrative. Oh, this is just saying. they'll
Just
seek
pop your
to
mic
protect-
on, Lisa, if you're
Sorry.
chatting.
I guess this is clarifying that they'll seek to protect a heritage building and avoid demolition wherever possible. So Joe, can you repeat what the question was, if that's okay? On
Yep.
the submission. Please. When a heritage building is assessed as dangerous or unsafe, should council also kind of, is that not, is this wording, it doesn't, it talks about protecting the value, but it's not referencing cost in this particular phrasing. Right, whereas you would have to take the cost, would you take the cost factor into account before saying it's dangerous or unsanitary?
So dangerous and sanitary would be a decision about the building itself.
Okay,
The cost is probably more on the how you remedy that.
okay. And so this question is asking, should that cost be taken into account in regards to work council? Because they're always going to work with the
Yeah.
land building owner first, right?
Should council also consider the cost for repairs as part of the assessment?
The assessment of whether it's unsanitary or the
Mm.
assessment of whether it gets demolished or repaired.
When a heritage building is assessed as dangerous or unsanitary, should council also consider the cost for repairs
For
as
repairs,
part of the assessment?
which basically means either you repair it
Mm.
or you demolish it. It's not a super clear question.
Mm.
I think too, it will depend on whether that heritage building is a classification. You know, there is a classification for heritage buildings, and if it's, you know, one must be protected at all costs, and at that point you may have to.
Maybe.
Ways of getting funding, I'm not quite sure, but I think Heritage New Zealand can in some circumstances come to the party if it's got a heritage listing. I mean, if it's a category 1, you know, they're going to want to protect at all costs.
This is coming back to me now. So when we discussed this in SPMP, we debated this with heritage buildings where the cost should be a consideration. And rather than come out with an amendment, we said, let's put it in the consultation document. So it's something that gets discussed, right? That's what happened. So it's not actually there now, I believe. That you guys agree with that? But it's not there, but it's here deliberately.
It's in the consultation.
We put it there rather than here because we wanted to get feedback on it. Okay, so it's probably one of the bigger decision points that you can consider how much we should consider cost when we're assessing dangerous and unsanitary heritage buildings.
I mean, is in part the right answer within a comment to clarify?
I'm not sure we've come to a conclusion on that,
Yeah. So,
actually.
I mean, where does it leave the landlord if their building is unsanitary or dangerous and they can't afford to repair it? what happens in that instance?
Every situation will be different. I mean, it'll depend on the risk. The building may simply be left as it is with a hoarding around it or something, so it can't be used. Or if there's absolutely severe risk, then I guess someone's got to look at the question of demolition. But every case would be different.
It's a tricky one, isn't it?
Carl, who makes your decision if
Just
something
try
is-
that mic again.
Who makes the decision if something is repaired or demolished? Does that fall with council, or in this case, it would be a Heritage New Zealand and council decision?
Yeah, ultimately that decision will rest with council. They're exercising the statutory power under the Act and the policy.
So I guess in my mind, that would make sense. They would consider this the cost of the repair. Be remiss maybe not to. And if they didn't, because that might impact the landlord as well. And if they, yeah,
I don't know what you're going for, not factoring the cost of.
are there any obvious advantages by not factoring the cost into that assessment process?
It removes the debate we're having now. You would simply focus on the building.
I would think at least in part, it would need to be considered. Taking into account the heritage status and what Heritage New Zealand had to say about it, and possibly any funding that they could contribute. All of those moving parts.
We could put that, we could put in part and then make a comment.
Yep.
Yeah,
Because
so
yeah,
all
like Simon was saying,
considerations,
you don't want it to be an excuse for people to demolish things, but
yeah.
if that's going to be the best
Question, Jo?
decision.
When a heritage building is assessed as dangerous or insanitary, should council also consider the costs for repairs as part of the assessment? So if we put in part and then just put all considerations should be made, how do we say that?
That sounds like we're saying yes.
Mm,
I think we're saying
yeah.
yes more than we're saying in part. I'm not sure what the
What should the comment read, do you think?
for yes or for in part.
Well, you can tick yes, no, or in part, and then there's an option
And then
for
a
a counter
okay,
comment.
yes, yeah.
So in part seems like the right box to tick
Okay.
with maybe a comment underneath. You're good with these things?
It is a tricky one when it comes to heritage buildings because.
I think this is only talking about heritage buildings,
Yeah,
this
because
question.
heritage Buildings, there are 3 categories. There's 1, 2, 3,
Mm,
and places like St Andrews, all 3 of their buildings are category 1.
mm,
You know, and that's probably whereas others are, you know, they might be category 3, not quite so
okay.
important.
Right, what should our comment read? All factors should be taken into consideration. I just don't know how
I
else to.
guess I'm not sure how much our comment will add, because when you read that 7.2, it's comprehensively covered. I think in regards to taking into account relevant conservation reports, taking into account heritage values, taking into account need to facilitate preservation, ongoing, taking into account circumstances. I think they've probably covered it. I don't think we're going to think of anything new necessarily in that, which I guess is why I'm saying, why don't we just say yes? Why are we saying in part? So if we're saying in part, it means that we're not firmly in the camp of yes. We're not firmly in the camp of no. That's fine if we are, but what it sounds like we're saying in this conversation is yes, according to what they've written.
Part of the overall, yeah.
Yeah, which is what they've taken some lengths to articulate in that bylaw. But I'm very happy if we prefer to sit in the in part, but I don't know what our comment would be, because I think the policy has stated that quite clearly. I don't know, yeah.
I think the
Maybe
policy is
it's-
straightforward. We've said we support the changes.
I think they have to take.
Yeah, let's
the
just,
costs
let's
into
put
account.
yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's just put yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So you happy with just yes? Yeah. Okay. Submit. Done. Thank you for having your say on our dangerous, affected and sanitary buildings. You're welcome.
Anytime.
Okay, so right, that's that. Now we'll move on to our schedule of meetings for next year. Now we have to make an amendment for our May meeting. Is there a reason we're not doing Wednesdays? Yes. Yeah. Is there a reason that it's not a standard Wednesday as always? Yeah. And the new proposed one is a Thursday.
It's just that they should all be a Wednesday apart from the May one. We have had to do a little bit of a rejig around May because of the LTP hearings and Ahuaki hearings that we're having. Just in terms of making sure that we're not having the board meetings on a day that we've got those on as well, so we can make sure that we can service the board meetings. We had to move from the original Monday because there was another room booking that we couldn't move because it was a standard one.
Yeah, Thursday the 9th, because we don't normally have. Yeah, we don't normally have meetings on Mondays.
No, so we had to move the May one because we
Because of
can't.
the-
Because of the obviously the hearings and deliberations that we'll be in, and so the May one should be the only one that is an alternate day.
Is it just because of the staff that would be available?
That will be staff and there'll be councillors will also be in LTP Ahuaki hearings and everything all day. So
Okay.
then having a meeting in the evening, it's not really gonna work. So it's just for that one.
So Thursday the 9th of May
Yeah.
is the new proposed
No.
Thursday. Yeah, so that's crossed out. So yes. So Thursday the 9th of May is the new proposed May date. So we just have to confirm that that's okay. Now, I just want to go to yes. And I just want to go to Andrew's. Andrew emailed us about he's got a few that he's away for, and I'm just wondering whether
He'll be able to Zoom in.
yes, or he was hoping that there'd be a couple that we could adjust. I'm just wondering if that May one. Yeah. No, he was hoping that we would change the dates so he would be able to come, and I'm just wondering if May is one of those ones. I guess we can't move it now because there can't be. She'd have to check.
We could look at meetings and move it out next meeting.
Yep. What we have done in this in your report this time is given a delegation to the CE in consultation with the chair to amend the meeting schedule, which that was the first time we did it last time at the council and committee level, and we actually found that worked really well. It was a lot more nimble in terms of changing things around when you needed to, rather than, because otherwise you need to know the month before to get an agenda item to just move a meeting. So, that does create that flexibility. Obviously, it would be done in consultation with all the board members. But, if there is one that further down the track you need to move, it's a matter of emails.
Okay. Okay, well, should we adopt the schedule now, and then we can go ahead and change any later on that we need to. So we're going to receive the report schedule of meetings, Joe's report, and we're going to adopt the following schedule of meetings for next year, 6 p.m. and those dates, with the 9th of May being the new May date. I'm happy to move that. And delegates the chief executive the ability to alter the schedule of meetings. Yeah, I'll move that in consultation with us. Yeah, with me. The second, Alana, all in favour? Right, carried. Right, board members' reports. I might start that off. I had urban mobility meeting this morning, and the Cook Street Leamington Shakespeare changes are looking really good. The designs can't be shared at this point, but they're very much going to be temporary changes. They're not going to be permanent ones, but they are going to really increase the safety in that area. So just wanted to give you guys an update that that's ticking along nicely, and the plans will be brought to us soon for our feedback. That one. Don't think there's anything else from me, Elise.
Thank you. So bad this thing. They are preparing the draft report now, which looks at kind of the top several options that they would take to council for consideration. That's going to run it past Sally Sheedy first, and then potentially to a couple of councillors. I've not been privy to a bunch of information within that report, and I have asked that what can be shared is shared with me before that then goes on to councillors. So if there's anything more to share along that front, but they yeah, I mean, they've got a very tight deadline and they're working hard to get all the relevant information together, and the costings are complex to say the least, but they're refining it down so they've got something concrete and focused to share with council moving into long-term planning season. Yes, since our last meeting, we had the Bohoro delegation, and we've had debrief meetings for Armistice, Lukenwa and Bohoro, all very good, very positive. Mayor Koji Hirano did, I guess, plant the seed of the possibility of a delegation going to Bohoro next year. So I guess we need to think about what the appetite is for that, and then if that's a yes, what the process would be. So obviously I haven't done that side of things yet, so it's a whole new part. So yeah,
When would you like to kick that off?
Discussions about
Yeah.
that.
Do you want that kind of put into
Probably
February?
yeah,
Mhm.
probably February, if we can have that as an agenda item would be good.
Okay.
Just starting initial conversations. I think they still have to approve it in their budget in Bohoro as well. I guess, yeah, just obviously from our side, if people are going over, it's going to be self-funded, so giving people enough notice that they can think about whether they can afford to go as a starting point.
Yeah.
Would be good.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So just check that mic, Sue. Yep.
Okay, I attended the annual general meeting of the Cambridge Historical Society at the museum. I suppose it's almost like they're still plodding along. You know, ideally they'd like more space, but, and you know, there has been some discussion about whether there would be a possibility of a combined museum library, I think, which could work as it does in the other centres. The Council of Social Services meeting, they were receiving donations for Christmas gifts for those who otherwise won't have them. The gifts that are being received and organised at the Salvation Army headquarters, if anyone's interested. And I attended the Tree Trust meeting. They've got concerns at the moment over mowing issues in the Oak Arboretum. That's a bit of a worry for them, but who's going to do that or how it's going to be done. Yeah, so that's it. And we've now got the lights up on the Christmas tree in the square. That's happened today. So that was, you know, that was pretty good. There was a wee hiccup because the HIAB for Waipa Networks had a bit of an incident, and so another one had to be brought in, but Waipa Networks are covering the cost of that. So today it was all lights up. So yeah, so that's good. And there's yeah, and of course this got the Christmas festival opening coming up.
Right. Thanks, Sue. Elise? Sorry, I just have more to add to the library, which, as you mentioned, the museum. Thank you. So it took my brain over. Just a feedback that I'm continuing to advocate strongly in that room for whatever the library ends up being a library of the future and a library that serves the kind of things that came through in our engagement around youth space and a place for gathering and meeting and beyond books. As they grapple, the team grapples with the cost, that's where the shrink and the pressure starts to happen, is on that community space. And so, and there are obviously some strong conversations around synergistic opportunities with the museum. And I've just continued to advocate that we remember what the community has told us in our engagement, which is that people feel like it's more than books, it's like a home away from home, and that kind of language that came through really strongly, in a place of social connection. So that's a challenging conversation to keep, not to keep having. It's it's difficult because there's strong financial constraints, but I guess what has been great to hear from the design teams that there are solutions that they can creatively propose that will help to meet those needs, even if it doesn't look specific, like, hey, we've got this room here for this. There are design solutions to do that. So continuing to be a voice for that, and there's similar voices in the room, but it just, there is a strong tension there.
And there are several really of that working, particularly in the South Island and Otago. There are several museums become libraries like that. This is the way they've done it. Alexandra is a particularly good example.
Thank you, Sue. Mike?
Done my usual thing, just gone backwards through the agendas since 3 weeks ago, just picking out things that will be of interest or should be on your radar, okay? And they are. In council, I could actually find nothing in council meetings that is of particular relevance. SPMP, the alcohol, local alcohol policy, the alcohol fees bylaw, and the public places alcohol bylaw are all, well, these guys are here for the workshop afterwards. So that's all sort of being kicked off, the formal part of that. And we've already, Cambridge Community Board's already had one go at it, so you're pretty familiar with it, but now the rubber's hitting the road on that one, okay? One that maybe is probably under your radar is the LTP performance framework. Sounds kind of boring, but it's the non-financial measures that council sort of puts up that it's going to hold itself to. And in terms of community board's role of holding a council to account, it's kind of one that you want to just be aware of, that there are these performance measures. Some of them are kind of like really dry, like, you know, that you're going to process building consents on time and stuff, but there are a bunch of them, and it's something in the LTP we probably haven't thought about much as a community board before, but it's I think it should be on the radar because it shows that you're doing that role, and you can both hold council to account that it is meeting those things and potentially advocate if you think there are better metrics that could be used. Okay.
Yeah, I was about to say, what did you say?
The LTP performance framework, it is one of the building blocks of Melissa's long-term plan. It never really been on my radar, to be honest, and I sat here for a few years until going through it now. But it's kind of a useful one. Some of them you'll think are kind of lame, and you know, they are quite dry, but some of them aren't quite so, you know, they're a bit more relevant. And the council's always looking for better metrics, if there are any around, that show that it's meeting you know, expectations of the community. So I just thought it was one to mention to you because it is one of the fundamental building blocks of the LTP. So when the LTP consultation comes out, you're going to get to see it all. Okay. You want to add anything there, or is that good? Okay, cool. We've got a new sustainability and climate change subcommittee of SPMP, and I'm the chair of it. So that's a new thing in response to internal audit, identifying that we weren't doing climate change governance very well. A whole lot of little bits and pieces are happening in the organisation to adapt and respond to climate change, but it was kind of to make sure we had joined up thinking. So yeah, that is just sort of just starting. Okay. Finance and corporate, we've met twice since our last meeting, and I've got to be honest, I couldn't find anything in there to report. Finance and corporate, a lot of what it does is it's publicly excluded because a lot of it's contracts stuff, and so it's commercially sensitive. So there's that component, and then also the preparation for the budget for the LTP. So a lot of that's been PX or sort of the interesting stuff has, but it'll come out, the LTP stuff soon. Okay. Service delivery, there's a couple of interesting things in there for the community board. The light vehicle prohibition, this is the boy racer stuff that has been sort of being worked up for ages. It is now by law. Okay. So actually technically it mightn't be by law exactly now, but it's about to be. I don't know when these things exactly get enacted. So there's now a whole bunch of streets and roads that have this prohibition on light vehicles after hours, unless you're there to go home or to visit someone. Okay. Remember, this was the one the police were asking for because they couldn't do anything about the boy races, because if they rock up and the boy races just parked up on the side of the road, they're perfectly legal. So it gave the police the tools to do something. The list of roads is reasonably extensive, can be added to over time. And it's, it's quite a significant one. This has been being worked up for ages and it's there now. Okay. So this group's had a go at that as well. Remember you saw it. So yeah, that went through. The other significant one is the sports field review. This has been run past you. Reasonably controversial proposal. Just to remind you that the sports fields that are currently all leased out to different sporting codes would, as those leases came up, would be basically brought in-house and be managed in-house. That the sports fields, the clubs could still have their club rooms on leased land, but they wouldn't have exclusive use to the parks. Now that was the proposal, one of the proposals that's the controversial end of it. From status quo to that, with the range of things that were consulted on that came to this board. The outcome has been a sort of a real softly approach, which is just that the instruction to the organisation is to continue exploring that possibility over the first 3 years of the next LTP, and to that end to facilitate a new officer, a new person who does that, who coordinates with the sports clubs and so on, and tries to sort of optimize within the existing model. So it's a softly approach, sort of to see how it goes. All right. So that's where that has landed. Okay.
Okay.
Some of the sports clubs were pretty exercised about it. Some were into it, some were anti it. So yeah, it's sort of a middle ground, a softly approach. Okay. That's what's been adopted.
I remember our feedback that we were going to. Yeah. I remember our feedback was that we were going to hear more from the clubs and community themselves before we gave any,
Yeah, that's why I wondered where council have landed, because there are a number of options, and our feedback was we thought more community consultation needed to be taken. And so when you said they're taking a softly approach, it's sounding like you're referencing one of the options, which was to employ someone to manage them. What?
No, there were 5 options off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Option 5 was invest in a different way. Option 1 was status quo, and then there were the various ones in the middle.
Option.
Yeah, and this is look, I guess it's a hybrid option. Maybe it's invest in a different way in the sense that it's status quo with this new officer to sort of keep exploring the idea.
Okay.
And with a view to, as the leases come up, granting shorter term leases. So that we're not, because some of these leases are really long. Remember, some of them are 30 years long.
Yeah.
So as they come up to put in shorter term leases, because there's a whole lot of complex issues in there. We worked around like infrastructure that the clubs own. Lights, it's a classic. So there are lights that So you've got the clubhouse footprint, and then you've got lights, so it got really complicated. So I think it's possibly an acknowledgement that there's more to be done. So the softly approaches that this officer will continue to explore, right?
Okay, so they haven't landed on one particular model going forward. It's that there's,
It's a continue to explore.
just continue this consultative
A
process.
little bit more than that. No, it's probably continue to explore the option of how we might,
Of how to get to that future model where this is a
or
shorter.
whether you want to get to the future model. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
like
Okay.
that sounds like that's the ultimate goal.
Would that, I say that's the ultimate goal? I don't think that necessarily got decided, right?
Okay,
Okay. That's why the words sort of continue to explore.
that's about as far as it is.
Yeah.
Okay,
So no one's losing their leases or anything.
Yeah,
And as
yeah.
they come up, short-term leases will be getting reissued, re-signed.
Yeah.
But yeah, exploring this option. So that, yeah,
okay,
I suppose you could almost consider that a long consultation, right?
sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Which I'm not opposed to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks.
Any more questions on that?
Anything further? Oh, that was you done? That's you done? Great. Okay, awesome. Right, the date of our, oh, sorry, no, I don't need to move that, do I? No, date of our next meeting is 6 p.m. on Wednesday, the 21st of February. And on that, we'll close our meeting, 7:03. Yes, as always, I hand over to my trusty deputy with her excellent pronunciation. Thank you. Oh, Mikey. Oh, Mike, thanks. Thanks. Te pau hihiri, te pau rārama, te pau o te whakaaro, te pau o te tangata, te pau o te aroha. Kaunei ngā pau e here nei e tātou. Mauri ora ki a tātou, haumie, huie, tai kie. Thank you, everyone. That ends our meeting. Little break would be amazing, 5 minutes.